My mother always compared me to my brother. When she fell ill, I was there every day. Still, she left everything to him, saying I was never enough. He said, "You were never her favorite. Accept it." I did, until I found the letters she'd written but never mailed, hidden in a shoebox, where she admitted the truth about. I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Same house my parents bought before I was born. Small, two-story brick thing with creaky floors and a broken front step my dad kept saying he'd fix. He never did. My mother, Nancy, was one of those women who could smile at strangers and make them feel like family, but at home she was cold. Not outright mean, not violent, just dismissive. Especially with me. Daniel, my older brother, was her everything. From the moment I was old enough to notice, it was obvious. He got the better lunchbox. He got the birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese while I got sheet cake in the backyard. Every parent says they don't play favorites. She didn't say it, she showed it. When I was 8, I came home crying because a kid had pulled my hair and called me ugly. She said, "Maybe don't give him a reason next time." When Daniel got suspended for cheating on a math test, she made cookies to cheer him up. I tried, believe me. I did the dishes without being asked. Got straight A's. Never talked back. Nothing was ever enough. I remember one day in high school, I brought home a college brochure and told her I wanted to go to Pitt. She didn't even look at it. Just asked if I could keep it down. Daniel was asleep on the couch. When Dad died of a heart attack, I was 25, still living at home while working 2 jobs and saving for grad school. Daniel flew in from LA with sunglasses and a suitcase full of attitude. The whole funeral, people kept saying, "Daniel, your mother must be so proud of you." Never mind, I was the one who found our dad collapsed in the garage and called 911. I was the one who planned the burial. Mom just kept clinging to Daniel like he was the only thing keeping her upright. After the funeral, Daniel went back to his life. I stayed. When she got sick 2 years later, I didn't even hesitate. I took time off work, used my savings to cover the gaps in her Medicare, cooked her meals, bathed her when she got too weak. She barely said thank you. One night, she was in pain, curled up on the couch. I held her hand and said, "I love you, Mom." She didn't say it back, just closed her eyes and whispered Daniel's name. When she passed, I was the only one in the room. I held her hand until the nurse pronounced her dead. She didn't leave me a note, didn't say goodbye. Just died with her back turned toward me. I thought I was prepared for the will. I thought maybe she'd leave the house to both of us, maybe split the savings. But no. The lawyer read it out cold and clean. Everything to Daniel. The house. The money. Even the family photos. To Daniel, she wrote, because he always brought me pride. And to my daughter, I hope you find your own way. You were never enough.
I didn't cry.
I just sat there, stunned.
Numb.
Daniel leaned over before he left and said, "You were never her favorite. Accept it." I wanted to punch him. Instead, I walked out. I went back to the house one last time to collect a few of my things. There wasn't much I wanted, just a couple childhood books and an old necklace my dad gave me. I didn't want the memories. I didn't want the pain. That's when I found the shoebox, tucked behind old winter coats and blankets that smelled like dust and mildew. Inside were letters.
Dozens of them.
All addressed to me. None of them mailed. Some were dated back to when I was in high school. I sat on the floor, the box in my lap, and started reading. And that's when everything I thought I knew about my mother and about myself started to unravel. I read every letter that night. I didn't sleep. Just sat on the floor until my legs went numb, surrounded by pages that changed everything. The first few were awkward. She was clearly struggling with what to say. One letter from 2009 said, "I wish I knew how to tell you I was proud of you without it sounding forced." Another said, "You remind me too much of myself. Maybe that's why I've been hard on you. Maybe I see the parts of me I don't like." But the deeper I went into the box, the more raw they got. In one from 2013, she wrote, "I know I've made you feel invisible. I know Daniel gets all the warmth and you get the cold. It's not fair. You take care of everything. You never complain. I don't deserve your loyalty. Another one hit me like a punch. If you ever wonder why I gave Daniel so much, it's guilt. After your father died, I found out Daniel stole money from him. Thousands. And I covered for him. Your father thought it was some business loss. I couldn't face the shame, so I turned it into pride. I couldn't breathe reading that. Daniel had stolen from our father. And she knew. And she still praised him. She still looked me in the eye all those years and made me feel lesser, knowing damn well what he'd done. Another letter said, "You were always the stronger one. I leaned on you because I knew you wouldn't let me fall. But I never let myself admit that you were the better child. And now it's too late." But it wasn't just guilt. In the last few letters, she admitted fear. Daniel scares me sometimes. He lies so easily. He looks me in the eye and says things that feel wrong. I wonder if something's broken in him. I sat there gripping the pages with shaking hands. She was scared of him. She still gave him everything. The next morning, I confronted him. I called and told him I wanted to meet. We sat across from each other at a diner on Hamilton Street. I slid one of the letters across the table. He barely glanced at it. "I figured you'd find those," he said. "You knew." I saw her writing them. Told her it was pointless. Guess she listened. My hands were clenched in my lap. "She was scared of you."
He smirked.
She should have been. But she still made the right call in the will. I stared at him, trying to understand what I was looking at. This was my brother. My mother's golden boy. And he was proud of breaking her down. "She covered for you your whole life. She should have covered more. Dad was an idiot with money. I just took what I was owed." I walked out before I did something I'd regret. But the anger didn't fade. It started to boil. That's when I decided. I wasn't going to let this end here. I wasn't going to let him win again. I started digging into Daniel's past, his business, his finances, his lies. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I had a feeling there was more under the surface. A lot more. I started with small things, online searches, public records. At first, I thought I was just wasting time. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized Daniel had built his entire image on smoke. He claimed he was running a successful consulting firm in LA. I couldn't find any trace of it. No license, no website, no client reviews. Nothing legit. Just a LinkedIn profile that hadn't been updated in 2 years. So I called the number listed on his business cards. Disconnected. Then I found court records in California. 3 lawsuits. All sealed. But one had enough public info to tell me what I needed: fraud. Some startup had sued him for taking investment money and never delivering on services. He settled out of court, probably with Mom's money. He'd been lying to everyone, investors, friends, probably even himself. But the worst part came when I pulled credit reports and property records. He had taken a second mortgage on our mother's house 6 months before she died. Forged her signature. The bank had flagged it but closed the case after she passed. I didn't even know that was possible. Apparently, he did it while she was too sick to notice or care. I felt sick.
He stole from our dad.
Then he stole from our mom while she was dying. And now he owned everything. I called the lawyer who read the will. Asked for a meeting. He was hesitant at first, but once I mentioned forgery and the letters, his tone changed. At his office, I laid it all out: copies of the letters, the court documents, the forged mortgage paperwork. He read through everything. When he looked up, his face had changed. "If even part of this is true," he said, "this will's going to fall apart." But there was another twist. The will was updated only a month before Mom died. She was barely conscious at that point. The signature looked shaky. I remembered that week. She couldn't even hold a spoon. And yet, supposedly, she signed a legal document? It didn't add up. The lawyer agreed to file a motion to challenge the will, pending investigation. He said it could take months, maybe years, but there was enough for a judge to look at it seriously. When Daniel found out, he showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door, yelling. "You think you're going to take this from me?" he shouted. "You think you're better than me now?" I didn't open the door. just stood behind it, phone in my hand, shaking. He stayed for a full 5 minutes. Then he left. That night, I went back through the letters again. And I found one I must have skipped before. It wasn't dated.
Short.
Just one line, really. If she knew what he did, really knew, I think she'd finally choose you. I stared at that line until the sun came up. Because that's when I realized something. My mother didn't just fail to protect me. She protected him instead. But not anymore. Now it was my turn. I spent the next 6 months building my case. I kept everything quiet. No more calls to Daniel.
No arguments.
I let him think I gave up. Meanwhile, I met with the estate lawyer, the bank that handled the second mortgage, and a handwriting expert who reviewed my mother's supposed signature on the revised will. Her opinion was clear. This looks forged. The strokes are inconsistent with earlier samples. And someone in late-stage pancreatic cancer wouldn't have had the motor strength for this. That expert signed an affidavit. I filed a civil case. The lawyer took it on contingency, said he'd never seen such a clean mess of fraud tied up with greed and family betrayal. Daniel didn't show up for the first 2 court dates. When he finally did, he wore a suit too expensive for a guy who hadn't paid taxes in 3 years. He laughed during my testimony. The judge didn't. I showed them everything. The letters, the bank papers, the mortgage. I explained how our mother couldn't have legally signed anything that late in her illness. I gave them proof Daniel had a history of fraud and deception. When they brought in a handwriting analyst on his side, he crumbled under cross-examination. 3 weeks later, the judge ruled in my favor. The will was tossed. The estate was frozen, then divided based on the last valid version, which left things equally between us. But that wasn't the end. The bank filed criminal charges over the forged mortgage. He was arrested for fraud. That house he thought he owned?
Seized.
His accounts? Frozen. His car?
Gone.
His life, piece by piece, crumbled in front of him. He called me from jail. Left a message. You think you won? You think she loved you more because of some letters? I never called back. But I didn't walk away clean either. Those letters, every one of them, cut through me. They told me I was right. But they also reminded me I'd let her die without forgiving her. I never said, I forgive you. I barely even said goodbye. And now it was too late. The truth? I was never going to get the mother I wanted. Not even in those letters. She was broken in ways I'll never understand. But she tried, in her own failing, silent way. I moved out of Allentown a month after the ruling. Sold my share of the house. Used the money to pay off debts and start over in a place where I wasn't just the daughter who is never enough. Daniel's still in prison. 3 years minimum. Maybe more if more people come forward. As for me, I keep the letters in a small box on a shelf. I still read them sometimes. Not to remember her, but to remember myself. The girl who stayed. The woman who fought back. She never said she was proud of me, but I am. And for now, that's enough.